This July marked a historic moment in the U.S. as Congress held its first ever hearings focused entirely on unidentified flying objects. Today, we're delving into the subject of these so-called flying saucers, a fascination of mine that began, albeit not in early childhood. Back in the early 80s, as a Soviet schoolboy, UFOs weren't widely acknowledged. I recall an occasion or two on Kapitsa's renowned TV program, Obvious and Incredible, where UFOs were briefly addressed, albeit with skepticism. In the late 80s and early 90s, an overwhelming influx of information about flying saucers emerged. Magazines featured numerous articles on encounters with aliens, accompanied by low-quality and blurry photographs of these objects. A notable incident occurred in 1989 in Voronezh, where a flying saucer reportedly landed, but I'll share more about that later. For now, whether you're watching this in the morning or evening, settle in and grab your drink of choice, perhaps coffee or something else. I am truly passionate about intriguing subjects like the well-known tale of Caspar Hauser, which has garnered nearly 2 million views. I'm drawn to topics where the line between reality and fiction blurs, yet remain captivating. Beyond concerns like health and wealth, humanity has consistently grappled with two philosophical questions. What happens after we die? During earlier times, when space science was not advanced, thinkers speculated about the existence of other worlds and the possibility that we are not alone in the universe. Throughout history, this notion has been examined by various philosophers, historians, and scientists, but one constant remains. Humans have always gazed up at the sky. Humans have long desired to explore the skies, and they eventually succeeded. More importantly, they've pondered the question, who is up there? Perhaps gods, or beings similar to us, who for some reason do not visit us. Or maybe they do, and we simply fail to recognize them. The topic of unidentified flying objects has thus been woven into the fabric of human history, and today we will examine it from various perspectives, ranging from skepticism to seemingly undeniable phenomena. Turning back to the parliamentary hearings in the U.S., let's examine the proceedings. 3 individuals testified: 2 military pilots, David Fravor, leader of the experienced Black Aces team, and Ryan Graves, along with intelligence officer David Grush. The pilots recounted their first-hand encounters with unidentified flying objects, describing both their visual sightings and radar detections while in flight. David Fravor reported seeing a flying saucer for the first time in 2004 over California. He testified that between 2004 and 2021, there were 150 reported sightings of unidentified flying objects in the U.S. Similarly, Ryan Graves, the other pilot, claimed to have witnessed flying saucers as well, and noted that information about these incidents is held by the Pentagon, with U.S. intelligence agencies addressing the matter. It's important to emphasize that all of this was stated under oath. David Grush, the intelligence officer, stated that it is unequivocally true that the U.S. government holds the remnants of crashed, unidentified flying objects. He emphasized that the government is engaged in reverse engineering these materials to comprehend their technology for military applications. Furthermore, he asserted that the government possesses several alien bodies, which are humanoid but not classified as Homo sapiens. This research is funded through specialized budgetary allocations, and such programs have been in operation for a considerable time. David Grush further indicated that individuals who disclose this information, including former employees, face significant repercussions and pressure. This suggests that the topic is highly restricted, if not classified as top secret. In response, the U.S. Department of Defense promptly dismissed these claims as nonsense, stating that while they collect a substantial amount of data on unidentified flying objects, they maintain a strong skepticism regarding it. While many reports, about 99%, can be explained by phenomena such as comets, meteors, weather balloons, airships, or various optical effects like reflections and refractions, there are certain instances I will discuss today that possess documentary evidence. These cases cannot be attributed to storms, meteors, or even the moon's reflection on a flying seagull. On July 9, 2022, NASA officially announced the formation of a team dedicated to studying unidentified flying objects, driven by a significant motivation that will be discussed later. While such groups have existed for some time, this particular one was publicly highlighted. The initiative gained traction after the Pentagon released renowned footage of unidentified flying objects in 2019, commonly referred to as Tic Tacs, which originated from the aircraft carrier Nimitz, an episode I will also detail today. I dedicated approximately 2 weeks to examining the archives, focusing on the publicly available documents from the FBI and Pentagon websites. There are indeed some intriguing findings. Let's review the material in sequence. It's important to note that local radio stations in America were quite popular at that time, where he began discussing the issue of missing sheep on air. The earliest known reference to an extraterrestrial civilization can be traced back to the Sumerians, who left behind images resembling flying rockets that date to around 3,300 BC. Additionally, inscriptions featuring the term Dingir, which can be translated as heavenly being or divine entity, suggest a connection to something unidentified. Numerous examples exist across cultures, such as rock carvings depicting figures in what appear to be spacesuit helmets found in Inca and Maya artwork, as well as in various Middle Eastern and Egyptian cultures. Scientists have varying interpretations of these depictions, with some believing they represent astronauts, while others remain skeptical. Ultimately, their true significance remains uncertain. Ancient Egyptian mythology describes many gods as descending from the heavens, while others emerged from underground or the Nile, with most divine beings regarded as celestial. The most venerated deity, Ra, was celebrated for traversing the sky in his boat. Similarly, Indian mythology introduces vimanas, celestial chariots, or ships that carry gods above their armies. While the Bible includes numerous references that could be interpreted as indications of extraterrestrial presence, it is not our focus here, as such interpretations often stretch historical facts to fit specific narratives, leading to conspiracy theories rather than substantiated conclusions. What do we know for certain? In the 1st century BC, Plutarch recounts a battle in Phrygia between Lucullus and a Spanish rebel. As their armies prepared to clash, a massive fiery sphere suddenly appeared in the sky, instilling fear in the soldiers. It was perceived as a dire omen. Historically, falling stars, comets, and meteorites have often been regarded as ominous signs. Consequently, the armies dispersed and the battle did not occur. Titus Livius noted in 18 AD the presence of bright stars moving rapidly across the sky over Rome and Italy. In 909 AD, Leo the Deacon in Byzantium described a brilliant star in the west that altered its course, creating astonishment among onlookers who feared it heralded calamity. The renowned Italian sculptor Benvenuto Cellini recounted his journey from Florence to Rome, where, upon ascending the mountains near Florence, he observed a gigantic spherical object hovering above the city. Captivated by the sight, he documented it in his diary. Finally, regarding Russian territory, the Ustyug Chronicle from January 25, 1677, reports a massive fire sweeping through Ustyug, engulfing the city. Amidst the blaze, a large fiery sphere suddenly appears overhead, hovering before flying away. Notably, these spheres either burn or emit various colors, such as purple, blue, bright orange, red, and green. Overall, this phenomenon remains unexplained. In 1876, French author Camille Flammarion published his first work, Residents of the Celestial Worlds, which had an overly lengthy title reflecting various philosophical and scientific perspectives. However, the content was largely a pseudo-scientific philosophical discussion, lacking evidence or sources, particularly given that humanity did not possess the technology for such research at that time. As time went on through the First and Second World Wars, numerous reports of unidentified flying objects emerged. Many sightings occurred during these conflicts, with military personnel detailing strange phenomena in the sky. However, it was after World War II that a frenzy began. The term flying saucer, or flying plate in Russian, first appeared on June 24, 1947, when private pilot Kenneth Arnold spotted a series of unidentified objects over the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. These disks, moving quickly in formation, did not resemble planes, balloons, or airships, and ultimately vanished from sight. Arnold referred to them as flying saucers, a term that has since permeated the media. This pivotal event took place on June 24, 1947. On July 4th of the same year, just weeks later, a United Airlines DC-3 plane was in flight when the pilot and flight attendant observed a glowing object with red lights resembling a saucer. Although passengers in the cabin reportedly did not see it, the crew noted that it swiftly flew by and vanished. Later that month, only 4 days after this sighting, the infamous Roswell incident occurred, the groundbreaking event that would lay the foundation for ufology. In 1994, officials asserted that the events were linked to the Mogul Project, aimed at monitoring Soviet nuclear advancements. W. Mac Brazel, a New Mexico sheep farmer, noticed some of his flock was missing on July 3, 1947. While searching for them, he discovered unusual debris scattered across his property. This strange material included large pieces of foil that, when crumpled, would return to their original shape, as well as blocks of a hard metal that did not bend, could not be cut, and remained cold despite exposure to fire. Additionally, he found patterned ropes resembling hieroglyphs or some unfamiliar script, which he likened to hieroglyphics based on his previous knowledge. With debris scattered across his property and his sheep missing, Mac, a responsible citizen, approached the sheriff to report his predicament, saying, "My sheep are gone. I'll look for them, but I found something unusual on my land." Curious, the sheriff inquired about what Mac had discovered. Upon hearing his description, the sheriff contacted the nearest military base, prompting military personnel to arrive and collect the debris. Meanwhile, Mac mentioned to the radio that he had witnessed a flash of lightning and heard a loud noise resembling thunder the night before. In essence, the area is scattered with remnants of a possible saucer or perhaps a balloon, leaving everyone puzzled about the mysterious object that fell from the sky. The radio broadcast was subsequently interrupted, cutting off further information. Subsequent discussions arose regarding whether the broadcast was genuinely interrupted, a claim made by the son of the radio station owner. Regardless, the situation was soon public knowledge. The military gathered all debris from the farmer's property, and on the morning of July 8th, they issued a press release announcing the recovery of a flying saucer and its components. By that evening, news had spread from New Mexico to Chicago, dominating newspapers with sensational headlines declaring that the American military had discovered an unidentified flying object. The term flying saucer was already well understood, implying that the military had encountered something extraterrestrial. On July 9th, General Ramey of the Air Force issued a statement claiming that what crashed was merely a weather balloon. He suggested that both the farmer and military had misidentified it and that an erroneous press release had been sent out. Nothing more than an ordinary weather balloon. His assurance that nothing happened raised skepticism, as media coverage told a different story, indicating that the government was likely concealing the truth. For some time, this incident generated significant public interest. However, as time went on, people began to forget about it amid the countless events occurring daily in America. Meanwhile, interest in UFOs continued to grow, culminating in the unveiling of the infamous Tully Papyrus in 1950. Tiffany Thayer, a journalist, wrote an article claiming that an ancient Egyptian papyrus had been discovered in the Vatican, which purportedly detailed the first human encounter with an extraterrestrial civilization and an unidentified flying object. This sparked considerable hysteria for a few years until Thayer was caught confessing that it was a hoax. The papyrus never existed. Nonetheless, the Roswell incident continued to captivate people's imagination. By 1979, it had evolved into a form of mythology, leading to speculation about Area 51, where many believed the government was hiding alien bodies and debris from flying saucers. This conspiracy theory took on a life of its own, feeding into the public's perception that authorities were concealing the truth, creating a sort of ongoing cultural phenomenon. In 1979, an officer named Marcel provided an interview to researchers Moore and Friedman, who were working on a book about the Roswell incident. He presented photos and revealed, "I was part of the team that discovered this flying saucer. We collected its components and transported them on a bomber plane to another military base." He showed images of himself alongside a piece of foil, asserting, "This is a genuine photo. Afterward, we were instructed never to discuss it. We received some metal fragments and were told to claim it was merely a weather balloon." In reality, the materials had no connection to a weather balloon at all. The metal rods were indestructible. They couldn't be cut, melted, or heated by fire. The foil crumpled, but reverted to its original shape, and both the rods and the ropes featured markings resembling hieroglyphs, all of which bore no resemblance to any known American or Japanese military equipment or any technology linked to terrestrial origin. Moore and Friedman continued their investigation by interviewing the son of the radio station owner. He recalled, "I was young, but I remember my dad having that farmer on the air discussing aliens and a flying saucer. Suddenly, we received a call and the broadcast was cut off. Someone from the government, I'm not sure whether it was the ministry or the Broadcasting Commission, called the station threatening to revoke our license if we didn't stop spreading panic. Given the Cold War context and the prevailing anti-communist sentiment, they warned us that if journalists started suggesting Soviet flying saucers were active in the area, it would incite public hysteria. We were urged to cease all discussions immediately." They subsequently tracked down an individual named Gerald Anderson. "As a child at the time," he recalled, "my father was neighbors with that farmer, and it wasn't just a saucer, there were 3 bodies. According to varying accounts, some sources mention 3 corpses, while others suggest 4. One witness described seeing the crashed saucer and stated that while the wreckage fell on Mac's property, the actual saucer landed a couple of miles away. This witness was driving with a friend when they spotted the saucer and approached it, discovering 3 bodies on the ground. 2 appeared lifeless, while one was severely struggling to breathe as if injured. Nearby, a 4th individual who was providing assistance recoiled in fear upon noticing them. Thus, the mythology surrounding aliens began to unfold, characterized by the iconic depiction of extraterrestrial beings with large heads and almond-shaped eyes. This initial description gave rise to that well-known drawing, with reports indicating that these beings wore suits crafted from a metallic fabric and matching boots. Though some may find this absurd, the truth remains uncertain. However, there are individuals who have testified under oath before Congress, claiming that the American government possesses biological remains of humanoids. Subsequently, investigators spoke with the daughters of Sergeant Brown, a member of the recovery team. They revealed that their father had confided in their mother about discovering something unusual, not a weather balloon, and that they were instructed to mislead the public regarding its true nature. This narrative diverges entirely from explanations grounded in earthly phenomena. In 1977, the Air Force issued a statement asserting they were conducting tests on specific weaponry in the region and deploying mannequins with parachutes. Misinterpretations by the American public led many to mistake these mannequins for extraterrestrial beings. However, the narrative evolved, and in 1994, the American government, specifically the Pentagon, confirmed that an incident had occurred. They admitted that while they had not discovered a flying saucer, nor was it a weather balloon, they had misled the public. It turned out to be another balloon associated with Project Mogul, wherein large balloons were launched into the stratosphere to monitor Soviet atomic technology by recording magnetic impulses from space near military bases. One of these balloons crashed and was misidentified as a flying saucer. What about the hieroglyphs found on the ropes? The balloon did contain ropes woven with adhesive tape sourced from factories that produced children's toys, which resembled hieroglyphs. There's no mystery there. This explanation was coupled with a counter-narrative in the media suggesting that the ropes might have come from Japanese bombs. Previously, I mentioned that Japan had plans to deploy biological weapons over California using balloons. Although the war had ended by then, these balloons continued to drift and ultimately reached the U.S. in 1947. An intriguing development occurred in April 2011 when the FBI released a report by Agent Houghton, written in 1947 regarding the incident. In it, the agent claimed that they had indeed found a saucer and 3 bodies. However, the Pentagon quickly designated the information as top secret, restricting access and stating that all findings had to be reported directly to the president, thereby denying the FBI any access. This document is available on the FBI website. Nonetheless, it was largely dismissed, with claims that the agent merely echoed rumors. During that period, 2 fraudsters in New Mexico, Newton and Gebauer, convinced unsuspecting rural residents that they possessed alien technology for dowsing, akin to a dowsing rod used for finding water, oil, or gold. They sold these rods to gullible farmers, claiming they were of extraterrestrial origin. This incident was noted in the FBI agent's report. While we generally respect the intelligence services of various countries, it's hard to ignore the possibility that the FBI employed someone who foolishly reported these dowsing rumors, including mentions of 3 alien bodies. It likely didn't happen exactly that way, but the notion remains. In 1995, a renowned video emerged known as Alien Autopsy, which was actually an old film from 1947 that appeared to be shot in the late 1940s or early 1950s. The footage features 2 surgeons in white coats and protective gear, along with 2 individuals resembling trained soldiers as they dissect what appears to be an alien and methodically extract its organs. Fox News purchased the film for $125,000, and copies were sold for $70 each, turning the whole endeavor into a lucrative business. The film was sold by Ray Santilli, a British producer who claimed it originated from 1947 and depicted the Roswell incident. He asserted that he had purchased it long ago, and many viewers found the autopsy to appear remarkably authentic, with no visible inconsistencies, presenting a believable setting. As it was produced by Kodak, the company stated, "Send us the original, and we will determine if it is genuine or a hoax." The producer provided them with a piece of overexposed film that revealed nothing substantial. While the film itself was authentic and dated back to that era, it contained no valuable footage, potentially just a random piece of old film. Upon closer inspection, it became evident that the posters visible in the film did not exist in 1947. Specifically, a top secret label included with a date was also unavailable at that time. Following this discovery, Fox News edited out the label in their subsequent broadcast. Later, Ray Santilli admitted that the film was actually a high-quality fake. He explained, "We crafted the humanoid from rubber and filled it with chicken entrails. Its realistic appearance is due to my memory. I've seen the actual footage. There was indeed an autopsy of a humanoid captured on video, and I simply recreated it." Since then, the myth surrounding Area 51, where the bodies of aliens and a flying saucer are reportedly stored, has flourished. I will later share details about a flash mob that occurred at Area 51. Meanwhile, the narrative continued with another event in 1948 when a flying saucer was spotted over the United States. 3 Mustang planes from a nearby military base were dispatched to pursue it. 2 returned while 1 continued the chase and subsequently vanished. The downed plane was eventually located, with the pilot deceased. However, this incident was quickly suppressed. In 1951, the Lubbock Lights incident emerged in the United States, a notable event that occurred on August 25th near Lubbock, Texas. Witnesses recorded a series of red lights moving swiftly across the sky. Numerous witnesses documented the phenomenon, and it quickly made headlines. On the same day, professors from Texas Technological College who were studying the sky also observed the series of red lights. The following day, August 26th, radar operators at stations in Washington detected unidentified flying objects moving swiftly before vanishing. On August 31st of that year, a student named Hart observed the series of red lights twice. On one occasion, he took a Kodak camera outside and captured images when the lights reappeared. The official explanation released to the public claimed the lights were merely reflections caused by fog or light from large birds, creating an optical illusion. This narrative was then communicated to the public. Established in 1951, Project Blue Book was tasked with gathering information on unidentified flying objects. By 1952, the project was formalized under presidential order to meticulously document all publicly known cases of UFO sightings. The goal of these 2 groups, with Grudge later evolving into Blue Book, was straightforward: to investigate the nature of unidentified flying objects and assess any potential threat they may pose to U.S. national security. In 1953, physicist Howard Robertson's group would convene, and all the teams ultimately concluded that these unidentified flying objects did not represent a threat to the United States. An intriguing story unfolds, well documented in newspapers and witnessed by thousands, known as the Washington Merry-Go-Round, which spanned from July 12 to July 29, 1952. The incident began around 11:40 p.m. on either July 12th or July 19th, when an air traffic controller at Washington Airport spotted 7 unidentified objects on the radar. Despite attempts to make contact, the objects did not respond and either hovered or changed course swiftly. He reached out to a colleague at another observation station who confirmed, "Yes, I see those 7 objects." The 7 objects moved toward Washington, hovering over the White House and Congress at 11:40 p.m. Following this, numerous phone calls ensued, and by 3 a.m. the next day, 2 jet fighters were dispatched to patrol the skies, but they failed to spot any unidentified objects and returned to base. At 5:30 a.m., the objects reappeared over Washington, prompting newspapers to print sensational headlines claiming an attack by Martians, Saturnians, or Venusians. A significant number of witnesses in the city reported seeing multiple unidentified flying objects. On July 26th at 9:30 p.m., all radar stations in Washington detected the objects, confirming their return. Once more, it took 2 hours to determine flight operations. Bureaucracy functioned similarly in every country. By 11:20 p.m., 2 fighter jets were deployed, with one of the pilots observing the unidentified flying objects. 4 of these objects surrounded the fighter, prompting him to request guidance from base, which instructed him to remain silent. On the 23rd, newspapers were buzzing with hysteria once again. By July 29th, the U.S. government, specifically the Department of Defense, held a press conference where officials claimed that what people were witnessing was merely a unique natural phenomenon, meteors and bolides from space creating an optical illusion. However, individuals with a basic understanding of astronomy pointed out that meteors and bolides typically aren't detected by radar. While the officials maintained their explanation, efforts were made to reassure the public. This incident became known as the infamous Washington merry-go-round. After incidents like those in New Mexico and Washington, public trust in the government eroded. Many began to believe that authorities were concealing information. Conspiracy theories emerged, suggesting that we are being monitored from space by UFOs, which might be controlling us or colluding with the government to withhold advanced technologies. However, these claims remained purely speculative. Individuals claim not only to have witnessed flying saucers, but also to have traveled with them, stating they were abducted and taken to Venus, Mars, and other planets. This aspect of ufology involves contactees, those who allege abduction by aliens or invitations to journey with them. We won't explore this topic in depth right now, as it largely revolves around belief. Stories abound, such as those about abductions and sightings of Saturn, that offer intriguing narratives. The man recounting his experience has never been to space. He's merely an ordinary manager. He describes the shimmering effect of fireflies in space, a phenomenon only astronauts have witnessed. He wouldn't have had access to this information, yet he articulates it with surprising accuracy. While discussing such claims can feel like sharing tall tales, and many consider it a conspiracy theory, the topic of contactees presents an entirely different narrative. In 1965, a fiery object fell into the forest near the small town of Kecksburg, witnessed by several onlookers. The military quickly arrived, loaded the large cone-shaped object onto a truck, and transported it away. Rumors circulated that it was debris from a crashed Soviet spy satellite, but its appearance did not match any known Soviet craft. To this day, an urban legend persists in Kecksburg that a UFO crashed there and that authorities concealed the truth. The discussion of unidentified flying objects grew, and by 1966, the Ummo phenomenon emerged in Europe. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the term Ummo. It's a peculiar tale certainly worth sharing. On February 6, 1966, in Madrid, a contactee named Peña witnessed a flying saucer featuring a hieroglyph-like symbol on its underside. After reporting the sighting, it gained attention in the newspapers. Subsequently, another contactee named Sesma received typewritten documents purportedly from the Ummo civilization, with each page marked by that same hieroglyphic seal. In Spain and southern France, letters began to circulate in 1966, attributed to the Ummites. Over this time, they shared 260 letters, amounting to over 1,000 typewritten pages, with various individuals, newspapers, editorial offices, researchers, and scientists. Each page featured a pictogram. The content of these letters conveyed that a civilization from the planet Ummo had arrived on Earth, specifically landing in Provence on April 28, 1950, to study human civilization. They continued to contact people periodically through these written communications. The letters are complex, blending philosophical and quasi-scientific ideas, clearly composed by individuals with with some knowledge of philosophy, science, and astronomy. By the early 2000s, a collection of about 300 pages of these letters had been accumulated, primarily in Spain and France. The last communication from the Ummites was recorded in 2009 in these countries, and since 2012, they have been reaching out through Twitter. Ultimately, it seems that the internet may have been introduced to the Alps and Provence as well. The letters discuss life on the planet Ummo, emphasizing that each individual functions as a neural connection and highlighting the significance of smell and taste within their society. They reference various events, including their mission on Earth to avert a nuclear disaster. In 1989, the Ummo correspondents alleged that the United States had engineered AIDS in a laboratory. Additionally, they provided coordinates that, according to indirect evidence, correspond to the Wolf 424 star system. However, astronomers assert that this location lacks any known celestial bodies, including stars and planets. In the Ummo letters, it is claimed that stardust cloaks their planet from observation. The moral framework of Ummite society reflects a unique interpretation of Neo-Kantianism. Some researchers note that the world depicted in these letters closely resembles Borges's story, Tlön, Ukbar, Orbis Tertius, which has influenced the narrative significantly. In France and Spain, a movement dedicated to studying Ummo has emerged, encompassing various theories about its significance. One theory posits that these beings are aliens who have come to warn humanity, potentially to prevent nuclear conflict by sending letters of caution. Another perspective suggests that leftist groups, particularly in Spain, utilize these letters as a means of communicating with the public during Franco's dictatorship. A further explanation points to sex as the sources of these writings. The prevailing theory, however, is that these communications originated from intelligence agencies such as the KGB or CIA. The claim about America inventing AIDS in a laboratory was reportedly propagated by the KGB, while letters addressing the threat of communism are thought to have been authored by the CIA. In 1992, Peña, the initial contactee, confessed to having forged the letters with a group. However, those who studied with him and were familiar with him contend that he lacked the education necessary to produce such writings. Despite this revelation, the matter continues to be viewed as a semi-conspiracy theory and has evolved into a significant social movement in that region of Europe. The 1960s and 1970s marked a golden era for ufology, greatly influencing popular culture through movies, comics, and music, featuring synthesizer sounds reminiscent of extraterrestrial themes. A notable example is the UFO house, designed by Mari Surinen for skiers. Its flying saucer shape with round windows allows snow to slide off easily, making it ideal for mountain settings. This design trend spread across Europe, particularly in ski resorts situated outside urban areas, becoming a fashionable architectural choice that continued to thrive within the region. However, I must emphasize that what I just shared consists of semi-confirmed details, half-myths, and legends. In contrast, there are documented cases that are undeniably factual. The most significant of these occurred in Iran before the Islamic Revolution on September 19, 1976. At 12:30 a.m. in the Shemiran district, residents began flooding military officials with calls reporting extraordinary activity in the sky. They described a massive celestial object hovering above, glowing with orange light and shimmering in shades of orange, green, and purple, visible from as far as 110 kilometers away. These reports were subsequently passed on to the military authorities responsible for handling such incidents. Upon receiving this information, General Yosefi, the district commander, decided to respond to the numerous calls and launched a Phantom Interceptor, a combat aircraft. At 1:30 a.m., the pilot took off and confirmed to base that he could see the glowing object from 110 kilometers away. He was ordered to close in, and these radio communications are fully documented and readily accessible. However, upon nearing the object within 40 kilometers, all of the aircraft's avionics suddenly failed. All onboard systems shut down completely. Alarmed, the pilot chose to return to base while the unidentified object remained stationary in the sky. At 1:40 a.m., a second interceptor, an F-4 piloted by Jafari, a future Air Force general, was launched and encountered unusual phenomena. As he approached the main object, a large sphere shimmering with rainbow colors, a smaller object detached from it and began moving toward him. Startled, the pilot prepared to engage it with a missile, but his navigation system suddenly failed, disabling his missile launch capabilities. He was forced to return to base while the smaller object followed closely behind, nearly colliding with the aircraft. Jafari attempted to eject, but he was unable to do so because all of his instruments were malfunctioning. As he distanced himself from the unidentified flying object, his equipment began functioning properly again. He observed 4 additional objects separating from the large craft. 1 pursued him, while 2 remained stationary, and the 4th dove downward, landing gently instead of crashing. While one could argue that perhaps the 2 pilots were hallucinating or that the callers were mistaken, it's noteworthy that radar technology was already available in the 1970s. These radars from the nearest airfield tracked the small objects as they circled the air traffic control tower, disrupted all equipment, and then returned to their origin. Jafari described the encounter as unlike anything he had ever experienced. The objects moved at speeds unattainable by any military aircraft in existence. The large object was enormous, visible from 110 kilometers away, radiating a bright light, while the smaller objects also shone brightly. The one that landed on the ground illuminated the surrounding rocks, making it quite conspicuous. Each smaller object measured about 4 to 5 meters in diameter, and the main craft resembled a medium-sized city bus or a civilian Boeing aircraft. On October 1st, 1976, Jafari's communications with the military base and airport were made public, recorded on tape. That same day, the American embassy in Morocco also observed the UFO, with reports sent through diplomatic channels to Washington. This entire sequence of events was meticulously documented. After returning to base, Jafari was interviewed, with American officials present during the discussion. The incident was detailed in a 5-page report on the Tehran event, documenting the sequence of events based on the accounts of Jafari and the other pilot. The situation in Iran was tumultuous, as it became clear that they had encountered something truly unprecedented, an apparent extraterrestrial object. This information soon spread to Europe and America, sparking a wave of media frenzy. 10 days later, Henry Kissinger addressed the incident, acknowledging its peculiar nature, but asserting that consultations with the scientific community led to the conclusion that it was merely a satellite or a meteor. That statement effectively ended the discussion. In 2007, Jafari was invited to speak at the National Press Club in Washington about flying saucers, where he recounted his 1976 experience, word for word. This confirms that witnesses observed the events and equipment documented them, proving that the incident clearly occurred. It wasn't just an informal game of gossip. The next account takes us to November 11, 1979, when a Spanish commercial aircraft took off from Salzburg, Austria, headed for Las Palmas, with a refueling stop in Mallorca. While in flight, the pilot spotted a massive flying saucer adorned with red navigation lights, initially mistaking it for another airplane. The aircraft was on a perilous parallel course, prompting the pilot to execute evasive maneuvers after consulting with air traffic control. Meanwhile, the unidentified flying object continued to pursue them, causing the pilot to become alarmed. Fearing a potential crash, the pilot requests an emergency landing in Valencia. Radar at the Valencia airport picks up the object, leading them to alert the nearest military base. A Mirage F-1 jet promptly takes off to investigate, and the pilot observes a large saucer with red navigation lights, reporting his findings. As the aircraft approaches, its avionics start to fail, causing the systems to shut down. Concerned about losing control, the pilot decides to perform a maneuver and attempts a second pass around the UFO. The UFO initially hovers at a relatively low speed but accelerates as the jet fighter approaches. Eventually, it seems to lose interest and departs, reaching speeds beyond those of the fighter jet. Realizing he's running out of fuel, the pilot decides to return to Valencia while the saucer flies off toward the coast of Africa. This incident garners media attention, prompting national authorities to convene and investigate, with the pilot being interviewed for more details. There are theories suggesting that the incident might have been caused by radiation from a chemical plant in Valencia, which could have refracted in the atmosphere and affected the avionics. However, this explanation fails to account for the equipment malfunction. Another theory posits that the pilot's avionics were disabled due to the presence of the U.S. Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean at the time, amidst rising tensions with Iran and preparations for a military operation involving strong infrared radiation. They use this technology to neutralize various aircraft and enemy missiles. However, the Spanish pilot, drawing from his experience, asserted, "I am aware of the Sixth Fleet's presence. As a NATO member, I am confident that no radiation could have affected me." Despite this, the incident was ultimately downplayed. Initially, it gained significant attention in Spain and was meticulously documented. This situation involved Europe and America, but there were also notable events occurring in the Soviet Union. Numerous accounts of unidentified flying objects emerged, yet only 2 cases gained media attention. One such incident occurred in Petrozavodsk in 1977. Residents of Petrozavodsk witnessed a large, jellyfish-like object in the sky, emitting beams of light that resembled tentacles. This strange phenomenon hovers above, sparkling in a multitude of colors including purple, blue, yellow, and green, as beams of light cascade down to the ground. Locals observe this spectacle several times. In response, a government commission investigates and suggests that the nearby Plesetsk Cosmodrome, where rockets are launched, sometimes causes atmospheric refraction that can create such optical illusions. While everything seemed normal, residents of Petrozavodsk discovered clean, melted holes in their windows, puzzling over their origin that night. When the commission examined these damaged windows, they suggested that local boys might have used air guns or slingshots. Residents countered, "But how can air guns melt glass?" To which the commission replied, "It's still an air gun, don't you understand?" Ultimately, the incident was downplayed, yet the people of Petrozavodsk remember it vividly. I first encountered this story in the 90s while in St. Petersburg, when a friend mentioned, "We lived in Petrozavodsk, and this incident really occurred. I was a child, but my father remembers. There were indeed holes in the windows." However, the account was eventually suppressed. Numerous theories suggest the involvement of a specialized KGB unit, which undoubtedly existed since the KGB handled a wide range of issues. If there were reports of flying saucers and numerous witnesses, it was essential for them to be monitored. I have no doubt that a division focused on extraterrestrial technologies existed within the State Security Committee. However, the subject was heavily stigmatized by Soviet science. While researchers and ufologists were not persecuted as they were during Stalin's era, they did face skepticism and criticism. Academics dismissed their claims, insisting, "Stop sensationalizing the public with this nonsense. What flying saucers are you even talking about?" During Perestroika, media outlets flourished, covering a wide range of topics that had previously been off-limits. Some focused on issues like prostitution, corruption, and organized crime, while others delved into reports of flying saucers, resulting in a deluge of articles across newspapers. One notable incident occurred in 1989 in Voronezh, specifically in South Park. Not the cartoon, but a local area familiar to Voronezh residents. Children witnessed a saucer landing there and reported seeing aliens emerge from it, dressed in metallic fabric suits and boots. The following day, the local official newspaper in Voronezh reported on the incident, which quickly gained attention and made it onto the TASS newswire, becoming major news. In the 1990s, Spanish journalists visited Voronezh to interview the children, now teenagers. A documentary titled The Voronezh Phenomenon, produced by National Geographic or another channel, was later made about this event. The phenomenon progressed from there, with reports of anomalous zones on the Kola Peninsula, sightings over Altai, glowing triangles, and more. Throughout modern Russia and the Soviet Union, numerous cases surfaced in the media. However, I do not remember any incidents as well documented as those in Tehran or Valencia, and I have not come across any such accounts. These narratives are rooted in the past, and now we find ourselves in the midst of congressional hearings that did not arise spontaneously in the United States. There are numerous photographs, a wealth of eyewitness testimonies, and videos captured by witnesses, albeit often with shaky hands. While all of this can be challenged, labeled as fakes, or scrutinized skeptically, there is documentation from the American military that previously denied the existence of such phenomena. Eventually, this information was made public, positioning it as potentially the most well-documented case in modern history. I'm referring to the Tic Tac story, named after those mints. This account begins in November 2004, when the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier Nimitz and the cruiser Princeton were conducting exercises in the waters near the U.S.-Mexico border, although the specifics of their drill remain unclear. On November 10th, the radar systems of both the aircraft carrier and the cruiser picked up unidentified flying objects in the sky. The crew reported this to the ship's captains, though I can't recall which ship made the discovery first. Regardless, the captain of the vessel that detected the objects initially instructed, "Reset the electronics. This is nonsense. Those objects are just hovering and moving." After rebooting the detection systems, it became even clearer that there was a collection of unidentified flying objects in the air. At an altitude of 8,500 meters and traveling at 190 kilometers per hour, the unidentified objects would appear and disappear repeatedly over several days. On November 14th, when they reappeared, interceptors were launched from the aircraft carrier, including a Hornet attack aircraft piloted by Kurth, along with 2 fighter jets. During the encounter, Kurth noticed a vortex on the water's surface, measuring around 100 meters in diameter. The vortex was caused by a cross-shaped object beneath it that resembled the outline of a Boeing airplane, although no reports existed of any aircraft crashes at that time. Agencies confirmed that no planes were missing from radar. Above the water, there was a smaller object, and another one approached it, all resembling Tic Tac mints. One of the fighter jets then began to perform aggressive maneuvers toward these Tic Tac-like objects. The Tic Tacs easily evaded the fighter jet, and with each aggressive maneuver by the pilot, they inexplicably changed direction and vanished, along with the disturbance in the water. Upon returning to the aircraft carrier, the pilots reported their observations. Subsequently, the carrier's command decided to deploy 4 additional Super Hornets equipped with infrared recording systems. The Super Hornets approached the group of unidentified flying objects and used their infrared sensors to record them, as conventional cameras were unable to do so. The objects hovered at 18 kilometers, or rapidly descended to just 150 meters above the water. Throughout this period, the infrared equipment captured everything, until the unidentified objects eventually fled, with the carrier's crew documenting the entire event. In 2004, the command opted not to disclose the events, classifying them immediately and instructing all pilots to remain silent. In 2017, the private research organization To the Stars released a brief segment revealing a recording it claimed was genuine, obtained from the American Navy and discovered back in 2007. 3 years after the incident, we located a recording on the servers of Vision Unlimited, a company specializing in special effects. They had stored it as a reference for how alien objects might appear and how flying saucers move. The identity of the person who uploaded the recording remains unknown. We received it and subsequently showcased it. Many dismissed the recording as a fake or nonsense. However, one of the Hornet pilots stepped forward to state that the clip is authentic and part of a 10-minute video captured by their aircraft. After landing on the Nimitz, the command contacted higher authorities. A helicopter arrived, confiscating all recordings, the entire onboard observation system, and resetting all radars. Everyone was required to sign a non-disclosure agreement stating that we had seen and known nothing. Both the cruiser and the aircraft carrier overhauled their systems, but journalists pressed the military for answers. In 2019, the Navy confirmed the authenticity of the videos, stating, "Yes, these and 2 additional videos are genuine recordings. Moreover, we have another video captured from the deck of the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt at a different location where similar phenomena were observed." Subsequently, closed hearings were held in Congress, all classified as top secret. Eventually, in 2020, the Pentagon released these recordings on its official website, where they became publicly accessible. The footage features small dots moving through space and was captured using infrared surveillance systems. How can we explain this? They cannot simply be bolides, meteors, or even geese reflecting moonlight. The Pentagon essentially admits that they cannot provide an explanation for these phenomena, despite the evidence being captured by highly sensitive equipment. They acknowledge encountering something inexplicable, which is likely not of human origin. This footage is documented and available for viewing on the Pentagon's website without any need for registration. It might seem absurd to picture individuals foolishly laughing while showcasing flying saucers, but there are legitimate explanations for these events. I've provided at least 3 cases that remain unexplained. People have witnessed these occurrences, and as technology advances, it continues to capture them all. Ufologists faced significant criticism, yet on the other hand, pop culture embraced the topic. Journalists have both driven and expanded interest in it, while some individuals developed an intense obsession. One such individual was Scottish hacker Gary McKinnon. Having played video games since childhood, he began programming in the 1990s and became fascinated by the Roswell incident. This obsession led him to investigate relentlessly for evidence of extraterrestrial life and instances of government concealment. He began programming and created Trojan malware, hacking into NASA servers from February 1st, 2001 to March 19th, 2002. Although he accessed these servers, he didn't steal any information. When he managed to enter the system, he often found astonishingly simple passwords. For example, one could just enter admin in the username field and leave the password blank to gain access. He shared this insight while tracking some publicly available IP addresses. At one point, he breached NASA's security, but was apprehended due to a mistake with time zones. He improperly transferred data from NASA to his personal email, which wasn't very discreet. As a result, the Americans caught him and sought his extradition. This legal process dragged on for several years, lasting until around 2010. Ultimately, a decision regarding his extradition was made, then reversed, and then reinstated. Finally, Theresa May, then Home Secretary, stated that the hacker had a personality disorder and would struggle in prison, especially away from home. She asserted, "No, dear Americans, we won't extradite him." So, what did Gary McKinnon find during his hacking? He claimed to have accessed NASA servers and uncovered information about the Disclosure Project, which he stated involved at least 400 people producing reports. These individuals are involved in civil and military aviation, the space sector, and the chemical industry, producing reports on how technologies from recovered alien ships are being implemented by the U.S. government. This may have inspired the concept for Men in Black. Notably, it has been revealed that NASA operates a facility referred to as Building 8, which includes a department specifically focused on UFO research. They are tasked with recruiting volunteers to investigate UFO phenomena. However, McKinnon claims that Building 8 gathers all publicly available information while deleting real evidence of UFO existence to keep the public unaware and avoid panic. He also discovered a group referred to as non-terrestrial officers, consisting of individuals who shifted between various units, but he was unable to locate their names in the publicly accessible membership lists of these organizations. When asked if he could provide evidence, he explained that the internet was slow in 2001, which prevented him from loading anything from the servers. Consequently, he didn't have any documents to share, but he insisted that he had seen them. You might consider him a misguided scientist, or perhaps he is not, but his story gained significant attention in England at one time. Numerous astronauts, both from the US and the Soviet Union, have claimed to have witnessed unexplained phenomena during their flights. About a month ago, the flight log of Tereshkova, who ventured into space in June 1963, was declassified. Since Gagarin's era, astronauts have meticulously documented their observations. In her flight log, an entry reads, 1420, 20 degrees above the horizon, observing a bright star about 3 times the size of Vega, moving swiftly. See attachment for details. Accompanying this note is a drawing by Tereshkova depicting the sighting. In conclusion, I want to address Area 51, believed to house alien bodies and a crashed flying saucer. In 2000,